master the business of speaking with your hosts, Taylor and Austin. You're listening to Technically Speaking.
Welcome to another episode of Technically Speaking. We're your hosts, Taylor and Austin, and in today's episode, by popular request, we are talking about how to run and produce a podcast that lands in the top 1% of shows. Now, what does that process look like? Is it difficult? Do you need it to be some complex process? Is there some secret sauce to getting in the top 1%? Do you have to run ads? The answer will surprise you about how to get a show in the top 1%. We even have a little bit of taste of this here at Technically Speaking, but we're not the experts here, of course, and so we brought on one. His name is Roy Coughlan, and he is a podcast coach based out of Poland who runs five different podcasts. Now, look, I'm just going to speak personally here for a second. We're running one show here at Speaker Flow. I cannot fathom running 5 of them. And for those of you who are listening or watching this and you tried to run your own show, I think you can imagine how much it really takes to run 5 different shows, 4 of which are in the top 1%, and the 5th is pacing for it. Now, Roy is a master of his craft and has been doing this for a long time and shares with us what it takes to truly get a podcast in the top 1% of shows. And like I said at the beginning, the answer really surprised us. So let's go ahead and dive in. As always, I hope you like this episode. Don't forget to rate it, like it, and subscribe to it. And as always, stick around until the end for some awesome resources. We'll see you in there.
Sweet. We are live. Roy,
Woo.
Welcome to the show. So good to have you.
Thank you for having me on.
Oh yeah, man, it's our honor. So we're going to talk about podcasting today. Everybody stay tuned. It's going to be absolutely amazing. One of the shows that you run, if I'm not mistaken, is How to Learn Polish. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Polish podcast. Yeah.
Can you teach us something in Polish?
Dzień dobry. It's like good day.
Dzień dobry.
Dzień dobry. Yeah.
Dzień dobry. Look at me, people. Fluent in Polish already.
Polish. Check out the show if you want to learn Polish.
Yeah, that's right. Now we're really excited to have you on. And something that struck me when I was reading about you on the internet is that you're a full-time podcaster. Is that right?
Well, I kind of class myself as a serial entrepreneur, and I was involved with a load of businesses and then kind of started one and then another and another. So I still have a few other things going, but yeah, the majority of my time now is kind of involved in the podcasting.
So how did it come to that? Like what led you into the podcasting realm in the first place?
Well, what happened is I was doing a load of real estate, and basically when the crash happened, I was doing well, but my other investors weren't. And I kind of covered from thinking things would get right, but they didn't. So everything came crumbling down and I lost everything. Houses, buildings, the whole lot. And through that, I had to go through courts, everything. And I realized there's so much corruption going on. Like I could see the bailiffs were bribing people so they could buy it themselves. And there was unbelievable amount of corruption in courts and everything. And I went to an event, which was, what's your quest? And I said, I need to actually help people with this, because a lot of people throw in the towel when they go through a bankruptcy or deal with bailiffs or anything like that. It's like there's a load of, the corruption is so deep you wouldn't believe. And when I was there was 2 speakers that were amazing. And I hated public speaking. It was like, I was competent when I was doing a job. I was working in construction in Ireland. And basically, when I go around the table to talk, I sounded like Mr. Bean. My voice just went. I just couldn't. And I realized I need to improve public speaking if I'm going to be trying to make a mission here to get it out. So when I came back, I joined Toastmasters, then joined another club. Then I formed another one, International Entrepreneurs. I done open mic comedy. I done a TEDx open mic. I entered competitions. I got into the final of 5 countries. So I went from one extreme to the other. And when I was at another event, there was guys just doing kind of workshops. And one of them was starting a podcast. I never even thought about it. And this was in 2018, in the summer of 2018. And I just said, this is a great way for me to get my message out. So because I had experience in speaking and I knew loads of people in that area, that was the first one I done, the speaking podcast. So that was November 2018. And
Mhm.
then I had another one, meditation. So I used to listen to meditation. It's how I kind of got over everything. Because when I lost everything, I mean, I was down. You know, it did affect me. Like, it was hard. And I started listening to guided meditation and all different meditation. And then it would disappear, or else they start charging you. And when you lose everything, you're kind of watching the pennies. So it annoyed me. And I said, I want to actually try to get meditation for people that doesn't disappear. And because I knew people around the world that done that, that was the next one. You know, so the meditation podcast. And it's like people, it was mainly to get the meditation rather than conversations. But as it turned out, I get a load of meditations, but sometimes the guest will come on, talk, so the listeners will kind of get to know them, and then they'll send me meditations. So there's sound meditation, there's all different types, and that's doing very well. That's in the top 0.5%. Next
Wow.
one, I think, was the Polish one. So you mentioned that. So I'm not fluent in Polish, but I'm okay. I can have a conversation with somebody that doesn't speak Polish. But what happened is I was trying everything. I was doing Rosetta Stone, listening to CDs in the car, just trying. I said, maybe a podcast. I listened to, because I had done a small bit of learning Spanish on a podcast, and it's a lovely way to learn a language. And the ones that I found were scripted, which I don't like scripted podcasts, and I don't know. Perhaps you're the same. You know when it's a scripted podcast. And the other ones I found were just in Polish. So it's like, I can't learn a language without knowing what it's about. And so my teacher, who was my teacher, who became my wife, we got divorced, but have a very good relationship. And basically, I said, let's do a podcast. And it was kind of just thinking, never planned for this to be kind of long term. So what I did is I just set up the tripod and took a picture, and then created a flimsy logo and used that. And it's kind of advice I give people now, that go away and get a professional picture and do your logo properly, because I was in number one in a load of the charts. And my screenshots are of that terrible picture. Whereas now I don't know, did you get to see it, but now it's a decent logo. And I've evolved. I mean, probably yourselves are the same. And as you go along, you kind of learn different things, get different camera, get different lighting. I've got the LED lighting there. And you just kind of grow as you go along. So the next podcast then was called The Awakening, and that was kind of the real thing. So with this exposure, I wrote a book, but I didn't. I said I'd print it first and get it out to. I printed 20 copies without doing the ISBN, just to get feedback. And 10 people said, "You'll be whacked for exposing this stuff." And I was like, and I didn't really care. But then my mom said, "Look, you've got your child." So I knew I had to hold back on that. But with what's happened in the last few years, there's so much more people that are awake to what's going on. So the awakening then kind of was the next one. And I mean, I've had amazing guests. I've had Mickey Willis, David Icke, Sherry Tenpenny, a load, and we do a live show as well then with other podcasters, Tuesdays and Thursdays. And that's a great experience as well, because, you get to talk to international speakers, and a load of them come back, which means that they're actually enjoying it. And the final one is the crypto podcast. So with that, I knew there was so much corruption going on in crypto as well, but I didn't want to kind of make the awakening talk about that. So I said, all right, I'll create the crypto podcast. And I organized 10 different interviews, before I kind of done the launch. And so I launched it in July of last year and done a few, and I got let down by 6 of them. And because
Whoa.
I was working on a few different businesses, I just didn't have the energy to be reaching out to people. And I got into the top 5% already. And then I came, which was amazing, and came back out, and so I'm not in it. So then I said, okay, I need to get this going again, because I'm really interested in it, with NFTs and everything, because one of the businesses that I'm doing is connected with that. So now I started reaching out to people, and I got 100% hit rate on the people coming on my show. So when I write to them, they all accepted, which is kind of unusual, because I'm getting different figures. Sometimes people say it's 10%, others say 20%. How can you prove it? But I got 100%. So anyone I reached out to, they've all accepted to come on the show.
Wow. Man, I don't know how you keep it all straight. First off, like, running one show is difficult enough, but what is this? Is 5 or 6 now, right? What's the total? 5.
Yeah.
Do you have a 6th one in the future, or are you going to leave it at 5 for a while?
I know that I've got kind of thoughts of one that would work. And
Of course you do, naturally, yeah.
But I know that the time, so it would probably be a case of stepping away from one, because it is a lot of time. And I mean, I don't just turn up. I do a lot of research. I spend at least an hour kind of researching the person. So, when I have the checklist, so like you've been on my show, so you know the kind of checklist that I have. And I know sometimes people are on a platform and you can see their thing, but by having the checklist, you get a different answer. They'll write something, or just they'll put pictures. So for example, I say, for the speaking podcasts, give me something funny as well. And sometimes people will give a picture, and that can get a lot of attention. Obviously, for the Awakening, I wouldn't be asking that, because it's not kind of, that's a kind of serious topic podcast. Sure. But just by doing that actually makes a, good connection with people.
Wow, that's cool. So I have like two questions as the form of the way you run your show. So the first is like, can you paint a picture of like what it takes to launch a podcast? Because you've launched 5 of them at this point. What's your process for starting a new one and then launching the show?
Well, I'm actually, because of what I've done, and I've taken a load of people through the process, I've now set up for coaching. So I've done all the recording, so it's about to go live. The website's up, but there's a few little tweaks to be done. And I'm taking, like, the webinar will cover a load of stuff, because I'm kind of conscious that there's different budgets around the place as well. So some people, they don't have the money, and so I don't want it to be, I want everybody to be able to actually have access to it, but obviously the different levels. So like, the first thing is kind of like, what's your niche, and what skill set you've got. Because some people, I'd love to do a podcast, but I don't know what to do. So you kind of tell them, okay, make a line. What skill sets have you got? What kind of things you like? And you can kind of just cross-elimination with that. Then you look at the different teams, and just by seeing, okay, there's comedy, there's history, there's, government, there's a load of different ones. There's something like 19. So then you can kind of choose that. And I also say, what's your why? And I think that's kind of very important, because a lot of people, I want to be a podcaster because they think they're going to be like Joe Rogan, they'll get 100 million. Like, have you been offered 100 million? Because I haven't. I'm still waiting for that check to come in the door. Like,
so, I wouldn't turn that check down.
No, exactly. Exactly. So you have to be kind of, don't go into it for the money. It's more going for the mission. If there's something you're passionate about, if it's a hobby, or if it's something that, even if it's gardening, saying, you understand it and you want to tell people about it, or coaching, or whatever it is. But when you're passionate, it's not a job then. It's like, I spend a load of time doing this, but I love it. I thoroughly enjoy it. And I think no matter what you're doing in life, it's when you get up in the morning, do you cringe? Or on a Sunday, do you go, oh, the week is coming? For me, I get a load of my work done on Sunday. It's just, when you love what you're doing, it's not work. It just becomes part of your life. So, I would think that's very important. As I mentioned, the logo. So then you kind of get your logo kind of sorted, and maybe website. Like, there's one place, Pod Page is good for websites. It's about 140, 150 bucks, but you get a very decent web page with that. And that's one that, you can get free ones. Obviously, I'm with Anchor, and the Podbean one is I pay, and I find that very good as well, because I'm not sure which one you're using, but like with sharing the stuff on the Podbean, there's a load of social media shares. So even recently, they kind of told Samsung, so you can share to that, and it's done automatically. So when I release an episode, it just goes out to a load of different places. And normally we'd have it that it's going to Google and Apple and Spotify, but when it's got a few additional ones, does it help? It's doing well. I mean, it's now in the 1%. It was in the 0.5% as well, the Polish one. So, I think it definitely helped me. Regarding platforms, like, I've looked at it so much. I done Anchor at the start because it was free, and I thought, okay, that's grand. And as I was in it, then Spotify bought them. So does that have a competitive advantage? Perhaps. I mean, they're not going to come up and say that. But, if there's somebody else on some other platform and you're there and they're going to show them both, I would assume that they'd put yours ahead of the other one. I could be wrong, but then again, to be buyer beware, a friend of mine who I do a lot of calls together, he was on Anchor and they just removed him and they wouldn't respond to his thing. He'd be on chat and they'd talk away, and then eventually they just end the chat. So he has never got his podcast back, because you're aware of the RSS feed, which is your kind of unique code. All you have to do is transfer it and everything is gone. And they just, so I was kind of, do I change it when I saw that? And I don't know, because we had a lot of the similar guests. We talk about a lot of different things. And they didn't tell him what was the reason. So
wow, that's
frustrating.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want that to happen. So like what I say with the platforms is, I'm not going to tell someone, go Podbean, go, Anchor, go like BuzzFeed is one, and I know that like when I was researching, they'd say, "Oh, you get free," but it's like free for 2 hours, and then after 90 days, it's deleted. So you have to really look at the fine print with a lot of these things, and it's like buying a car. Which car are you going to buy? You know, which car do you prefer? So there's no point. Like if you do the research yourself, you look at all the advantages, look at the costing. Some of them are charging per downloads, and others is just a set fee. So it's depending on your budget as well and what kind of support they've got. So regarding the platform, that's what I'd kind of say. Regarding editing, I'd use Audacity, so I use it on PC. Cool. And to be honest, what I did is I hired a guy, an engineer, to come in, tell me how to do it. Am I doing it the best way possible? I don't know. He showed me what to do, and I've been copying it for 4 years. I think the sound sounds grand. So I replicate that, and I show that in the course as well. I teach, so basically, like when somebody's trying to learn how to edit, I am not computer literate. It's like for me to do that, but it just becomes second. Now it's simple, and it's just a case of highlighting, deleting. If there's pause fillers, if there's a long, or if you're inserting, it is very easy to navigate. And so Audacity is very good. And then like I record on Zoom, so most of my calls are online, and I use Convert Online, I think it's called, or Online-Convert. So that converts the file to a WAV file, and then when I save it, as MP3 when it's ready. And yeah, it's all
You've
doable.
Done this multiple times.
Yeah. And another thing I tell people is like when I was starting off, I had like a checklist of things to be aware of. It don't need to do that now, but for someone starting off, like the doorbell, put a sign in the door. Like I was taking out the batteries, and in the end, the doorbell wasn't working. So I said, I can't be doing this all the time because there was no on-off switch in the doorbell. So now I put a sign up on the window. And yeah, can there be a disturbance? It's happened twice in 700 episodes. So, it's not too bad. But if it does, just like I normally tell people, look, if something happens, it's good. I mean, obviously when it's live here, it's a different situation. And I've had live as well when it happened once. But these things happen. You just, like when I'm telling the guests, I say, look, if something happens, don't worry, I'll timestamp it, I'll pause it, because the courier could call to them or whatever. And, not to beat yourself up and not kind of get frustrated, because at the end of the day, you want to remain calm and just kind of enjoy what you're doing. So
that's good advice.
Other things like a fan, if you have a fan, make it turn off, because like you see, Austin, I see you with your earphones. I always wear the earphones because you will pick up on anything. There's plenty of times, and I tell people, take control, because sometimes you might have a really famous guest or whatever. It doesn't matter. I mean, if you know that there's noise in the background, tell them. I've stopped the interview on numerous occasions and said, sorry, look, there's binging in the background and everything. That's going to be a nightmare to edit. So make sure it's your show. You take control and don't let people. And like what I was doing as a kind of to stop people doing that is, I must just check, did my Discord go on and just check the Telegram? Because even if you say it to them, it's when you do that, then they'll kind of start moving around and doing it. So for the sake of just saying that, it really helps that you won't have that. And the same with the phone. Like I had an interview with somebody when they were there, and they put the phone on vibrate, and it's on the table, and you're so even things like that. Like but you learn these things, and if I go back and listen to the first episode, I'll cringe. I kind of go.
Yeah. Austin and I joke about that all the time with our show. We just don't go listen to the first episode.
What happened was my mother, because I'm in Poland, my mum is in Ireland, so she was saying, "You're talking too fast. It's terrible. There's no way they'll understand you." And I know, being Irish, we do tend to talk a bit faster, but and I kept listening. I was asking other people. It turned out that she had the speed on by 2.
Take it with a grain of salt, I suppose. So I just want to take a second I want to zoom out for just a second here, because you've covered so many amazing little golden nuggets. But so for the listeners, I think what I just heard, and confirm with this with me if this is true, Roy, like this whole process really needs to start with the why, the reason that you actually want to do this, because the passion is going to fuel the consistency of the podcast. I expect we've experienced that at least. And then, like you just talked about a bunch of logistics, you know, you obviously got to have content down, you probably do some branding, like a logo, you got to pick a platform, you got to have a plan in place to do some editing. So these are the logistical components. But I kind of heard these like two major segments is like understand why you want to be doing this and then sort out the logistics of doing the thing and expect some trial and error and iteration along the way. So did I summarize that okay?
Exactly. Yeah, you've
Okay.
done a beautiful job, actually.
No, thanks. Just gonna make me blush.
Blushing over there.
So, like, if somebody has found their why, they know they want to do it. They're starting to work out the logistics. I think a lot of people have this question that bounces around in the back of their head, like, "Oh, well, everybody has a podcast." So you started 5 of them. Your perspective is going to be helpful here. Like, is it still relevant to start a new podcast in 2022?
Absolutely. And the thing is, like, if you look, I mean, according to Listen Notes, there's something like 2.8 or 2.9 million podcasts. There's so many people, they'll do 3 shows or they'll do 10 shows and they'll throw in the towel. And, you know, because they expect the sponsors to come running at them with a big checkbook. And, you know, that's not how it works. So if you go in with the right mindset, that it's a slow game and eventually it'll start working its way out. And like, for example, I encourage people, if you've got a business or whatever, to be promoting yourself. No, don't be thinking about, because that way, whether you've got a book or whatever you're doing, by actually letting people know who you are. And if they like your style, they'll be checking you out anyway. So there's, you know, that's a better way than getting monetization. Because, yeah, I mean, the figures for actually making money, I mean, when you get a sponsor, it can be $10 to $40. And depending on, you know, front, mid roll or end roll, and then they'll either want you to do the recording or they'll send it to you. And, you know, when you're starting off, your numbers aren't going to be, you know, unless you're famous, because the reality is, you know, it takes a while to grow the audience. And like regarding the marketing, because that's the secret sauce, everyone's saying, well, how'd you do it? How'd you do it? How'd you do it? They all want to know. And I think you want to know as well, don't you? And
of course,
my tip is the best marketing that you can do is create a brilliant show. Because that will be your best marketing. Because there's people they'll do a load of marketing, but their show, and they don't prepare right. And I mean, I've been on shows and people like they before the recording they go, "What did we say we're going to talk about again?" Or, you know, they just, yeah, you know, like you've done your homework. I can see that. I know, and I do the same. You respect your guests coming on, but loads of people don't. So I mean, I encourage people, like, if you're going to do this, do it right. Spend an hour. Like, I ask people on my sheet, like, what's your best video? Because if I go into your YouTube channel, you could have 400 videos. I could look at the worst 10. So isn't it better because you know what's your best video? You'll send me that and you'll tell about different things you want to talk about. Then I have that. And then I kind of, you know, I'll check the Twitter. I'll check everything. I'll spot something. You know, I try to come up with different things. And I don't know. I just, like, sometimes, I don't know, does it happen with you as well? You kind of have a thought process of what way it's going to go, and it just goes off on a tangent. And if it does, great. You know, it's like, that's how it is. You know, you shouldn't go, goes. Oh no, I want to stick to this, and you know, you just go with the flow. And at the end of the day, like, the way I see it is, you're having a conversation, and the audience is like a fly in the wall, and they're listening in. And if they enjoy it, you know, it's like, I listen to podcasts, and I kind of know what's. Like, and one of the things, I don't know what your thoughts on this one is, but like, I was doing music, you know, intro music and stuff like that. And, you know, there's one of the girls that I taught to do it, and she's a lovely introduction stuff. Then I stopped it. I was like, because it's time consuming. And with the Polish one, I had a beatboxer that was doing it, and it sounded good. And nobody said nothing. But once I removed it, I got so many comments. Thanks for removing it. So, and I wonder, like, when, like, if you look at, say, Joe Rogan or the other ones that I listen to, they have no intro and stuff like that. And I full forward it when there is a podcast I'm listening to. So, you know, whether they're talking about their sponsors or they're just going, welcome to the show with da 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 and the music, we all just speed it up. So are we wasting our time putting it in? Like, we think it sounds professional and welcome, here's your host, you know. So I've come to the conclusion that it just put it out as it is.
Nice. Yeah. Well, I think, like, one of the really cool things that you just said, especially like as Austin asked that question, immediately afterwards, you basically touched on the fact that even though there are, like, what, 2.8 million podcasts or something like that, right? A fraction of those are actually live, that like they're not continuing on, they're not recording new episodes, they stopped recording after episode 3 or 10. In fact, I remember when we started Speaker Flow, we got into some statistics just trying to, or the Technically Speaking podcast, about like how like many shows make it past episode 10, and I think it was something along the lines like only 30% of podcasts will go beyond episode 10 or something ridiculous like that. I don't know if that's the actual stat, we can look it up, but the point being is like, it seems like if you're just consistent, you work on polishing your show and making it awesome, bring on great guests, you iterate on your show, like for example, removing your intro if you feel like that's causing you hangups. Like if you just stick with it long enough, like you'll probably end up with a show that does really well and gets you ranked into that top 10, 5, 1/2% kind of mark. Did I hear you right?
No, absolutely. And another thing
Is there
that's
anything
kind
else that goes into like ranking a show in the top 1%, or is it just
well, one thing
consistency
that
and
I
having an
think,
awesome
like,
show?
because you're saying consistency. There's one podcast I listen to Blind Boy, and he just an Irish guy, very quirky, very popular, and he's every Wednesday morning. I know it's going to be there. So with my Polish,
Mm,
usually the odd time I'll have a little hiccup, it's Monday and Wednesday. The other ones are haphazard. I just can't, because the way I'm doing, obviously with so many going on, and sometimes it's a Sunday I get time. But I know that it makes a massive difference when you're consistent. So if I
mm,
encourage the people that I bring through the system, if you're going to do one a week, release it on a certain date, whether it's a Monday or whatever day it is, just stick to it. Then your fans become actually waiting for it, as opposed to just assume that they'll be there. And one thing that I did after, I think, was it 2 years with the speaking podcast, I kind of took a break. I said, yeah, I'll take a month off or whatever, and turned out to be a bit more. And your audience isn't hanging around waiting for you. I had to grow it again. So I tell
that's
people,
right.
look, don't. And some people take a holiday, a month off or something like that. But if you're doing that, let your audience know. Listen, we're taking the month off. We're going on holidays. But what I would actually recommend instead is have all the recordings done, because you can schedule it. Like it's very easy on Podbean and same on Anchor. You can actually have the recording there and have it scheduled for when it goes out, and bang, it's out there. And you don't need to be worrying. Obviously, you wouldn't be doing the same marketing that you normally do, but at least you're not going to lose your audience.
Mm.
Right.
Yeah, that's good advice. With the technology that we have, it's never been easier for us to be able to, like get our stuff out consistently. You don't have to be there live and in the moment. Taylor and I will go through fits where we'll record 3 or 4 episodes in a day sometimes, because the next few weeks are really busy and we need space. And
Yep.
so, anyways, I think that it's easy to get overwhelmed thinking about the consistent time commitment it's going to take in order to make a show happen, and I think that can stop some people. But what you said is important, because you can batch things, you can use the technology that we have to make this process easier and make the whole outcome of having a show that works a lot. It's a lower barrier of entry, I think, than some people think that it has to be.
And I've often
Yeah.
done, like, say, 4 shows as well. But sometimes people are booking on the calendar before I kind of realize, and they'll be 3 in a row on the hour. And that's tiring,
That's
because
heavy. Yeah.
I have the homework done, but you still need to kind of, so I try to, and I'd encourage people at least have an hour in between, because you need to decompress from. And sometimes, I mean, I'm doing heavy stuff with the Awakening podcast, and you're going from heavy stuff and then into the speaking podcast and then back into another heavy one, and yeah, it's, so I would say try to have a cushion in there.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
that's true if you're guesting on shows, like I know a lot of our listeners, they might not even be running their own podcasts yet, or maybe they're thinking about it, but I know the vast majority of our folks listening will want to appear or do appear regularly as guests. And with cool platforms like Podmatch out there, or other platforms to connect people to like be guesting is becoming really popular. It's more accessible, I think, than having to do a bunch of outreach. And so even if you're guesting, like it takes a lot out of you to like be on a podcast. So just space those out, because
And
those days are
that's a
heavy.
business in itself as well, just to understand how to
Yeah,
pitch. You just,
right.
because I mean, I've got pitches where people just they tried to BCC, but they CC'd it to a load of podcasters, and it's like, not in a million years would I leave somebody like that come on my show. There's people that
Right.
genuinely listen to your show and they'll mention something, and then there's others they pretend to, but by the message. And so I kind of look at that and say, yeah, do they deserve to come on my show?
mm.
Right. No, that's a great piece of advice. So we're getting close to our time, which is crazy. These things go by so fast. Always blown away by that. So we have so somebody's starting a podcast, right? It's their first one. They're getting it off the ground. They got all the logistics sorted. They're recording their shows. Maybe they already recorded, let's say 10 of them. How do you think somebody goes about getting their first 100 subscribers to a show? What's that path? Is it just consistency? Is it as simple as that, or is there more to it?
I remember for the speaking podcast, I was just going on. I was going to a Toastmaster meeting. Did you listen to it yet? Did you listen to it? Just get a tick neck. Don't be afraid. And another thing is,
Nice.
you're asking to get in the charts. The reviews definitely help. So I constantly on the show say, hey, give me a 5-star rating, a review, and a comment, because it definitely helps. That because people see that, and then when I get a lovely review, because sometimes, you've obviously got reviews as well. Sometimes it's like, wow, that's beautiful what they've just wrote, and I take a screenshot of that then, and then post it on the different things as a marketing, as well as giving the link, so people who haven't been listening, they see someone's comment, they go, oh, I must check this out, and you don't know, they could be interested in that. And what I did at one stage, I wanted to get into the UK market, so I started reaching out to everybody I knew in the UK, and I say, hey, give me a 5-star rating, give me a. And someone of them came back and they were like, hey, I really like this. And they're still listening to it. So, don't be I sold a property at one stage. I was walking to the garage with the two guys, the car park, and they were asking me what they're doing. I started doing podcasting. I got the two of them to give me a 5-star review as I was walking with them, because I know it makes a difference. And I'm helping then more people get, it's free podcast. I'm not charging people to actually listening. So the more people that can listen. So by just getting friends to give you a 5-star rating, it's not hurting them.
Right. Yeah. I think
that.
there's just a massive lesson in that whole answer, Roy. It's just ask, make it known. And
nobody has ever refused me. Nobody has ever refused me.
After 700 episodes, that's saying something.
Yep.
For sure. Wow, Roy, what a tremendously valuable episode. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. If folks want to learn more about you, your podcast coaching program, and all the other shows you do, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
I'd say the best way is bio.link/podcaster, because I've got all my social media, the 5 podcasts, the coaching, and everything else, and they'll find everything there.
Oh, beautiful. Well, I'll make sure that's in the show notes. So definitely go check Roy out and listen to all of the shows, especially if you want to learn some Polish like Austin and I did today. But definitely check out his speaking show. We have a few clients that have been on that show as well. It's a really great show. So go check that out. And hey, if you like this episode, don't forget to rate it, like it, subscribe to it. And if you want more awesome resources like this, go to speakerflow.com/resources.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, lads.
Thanks for tuning in today. Check the show notes for more info and see you next time. Later.